We are live, gentlemen, and funny, it's a beautiful day in Austin, and I cannot seem to get warm. I don't know why. I think it's my old age kicking in. Anyway, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, good whatever for wherever you are. My name is Matt Kimball, and I am joined by the ever charming Paul Smith Goodson and the ever bald Will Townsend. For an episode. Sorry, Will.
Hey, I embrace my baldness. I'm never going to do a rug or anything like that. I'm just going to keep it tight.
That's good, man. I'm about to hit that point. Anyway, welcome to the Jackie Robinson edition of the Data Center Podcast from Moor Insights Strategy. That means number 42. We are here to talk all things technology. And we have fun doing it, and we say some irreverent things, and we say some funny things, and we say some insightful things. What we don't say is things that are intended to sway your decisions around investments. So please don't take anything we say as investment advice. Before we start, please hit that like and subscribe button, because I have a feeling by the time we finish, you will not like us or want to subscribe. So let's get that out ahead of time. Y'all had a
start over.
Go on, that was funny. Did y'all have a good weekend? Good Easter, Passover weekend?
Yeah, it was relaxing for me. I'm just coming off 5 weeks of continuous travel, Matt, and last week was self-induced. I spent some time at my home in the Florida Keys and had to battle soul-crushing traffic tied to a water main replacement, but I accomplished my objective to finish my kitchen remodel, right, and then I was able to spend the day in Key West before I flew out on Saturday. So I'm very well rested and relaxed for the week.
All right, hold on before you jump in, Paul. You cannot count that as a week of travel. You are enjoying yourself in Key West. Sorry, but yeah. Anyway, got it. I appreciate it. Glad you're back.
Thank you. It was tough.
I'm sure. Poor guy. How about you, Paul? Did you have a good weekend?
Yeah, I had a good weekend.
All right.
Every weekend when you wake up, it's a good weekend. You know?
Yeah. I hate to say.
You echoed Ecclesiastes, Paul. I mean, I know it's Easter Monday, but I think King Solomon said that it's a good day when you wake up and draw a breath in the morning. So at 58 years old, I keep that in mind.
Yeah.
There you go. Even if it's a wheezy breath, it's a breath nonetheless.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey, we got a lot to talk about today. We're going to talk NTT, QEC, and LPDC. We're going to talk tariffs, kind of. HPE, Chatbots, and Dell. So lots to talk about. We're going to cover a lot of different topics, but we're going to jump in and let Will kick things off for us, talking about physics. Wow, look at you, huh? Physics of AI Research Initiative. Throw quantum in there, and Paul's going to start worrying about you.
I'm sure Paul's going to be very, very interested in this topic. So, I provided on our last podcast a preview of NTT Upgrade, and we talked about what they're doing with an all-photonics network, ION. And so this is sort of my post-event wrap up. And I did publish a research note, so I'm going to put a gratuitous plug in. So hit the Moor Insights Strategy website to read a little bit more about what I'm going to talk about this morning. But let's start off with NTT. So Upgrade is sponsored by NTT Research. That is their North America group. They're based in Sunnyvale. So they're right in the smack dab middle of Silicon Valley. And they're focused on a number of different things. From a research priority perspective, it covers quantum computing. So Paul, you'll be interested in that. Advanced cryptography and biological digital twinning. And an ION, and what we talked about 2 weeks ago, is one of the byproducts of that research. But I had an opportunity to sit down with the president of NTT Data to talk about what they're doing with respect to AI. NTT has been very focused on sustainability. We've talked about that on prior podcasts. I mean, one of the biggest concerns around modern AI, generative agentic AGI, is the power consumption tied to GPU processing and all of that good stuff. So sustainability is front and center in all of their research efforts across those three areas that I mentioned. They're also very focused on human autonomy to ensure AI's proper design and application, fairness and openness to eliminate bias, security provisions, and that's super important. Another area that I manage for the firm, privacy, and then communication and co-creation. But what's really interesting at Upgrade, they announced a new research initiative called the Physics of AI. And what they're intending to do is to understand the inner workings of how all of this works, right? It's sort of a black box for many people. And I'm going to love to get Paul's perspective on this when I finish my dissertation here. But what it does is it builds upon prior research with the Harvard University Center for Brain Science. And what they're attempting to do is apply physics to measure and understand the precise details of what makes machine learning and AI algorithms work. And I think this is pretty compelling. Unless Paul has some perspective on this, I'm not aware of anyone else that's focused on the physics of AI necessarily. And what's interesting, from my perspective, as I spent time with executives, I mean, this research, although it may take years to gain practical sort of, learnings to actually, kind of implement and refine AI. But I think it's got great potential. I mean, if we can understand like how all this stuff works, that could really unlock and drive innovation. But with all of that said, Paul, I'd love for you to weigh in with what you think about NTT's focus here. And Paul may be on mute.
He is.
Sorry, I was being polite.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I mean, now we know how to train them, we know how to build them, and we know how to use them. But we know very little about the internal workings of AI. Anthropic is doing some really interesting work on the logistics of how different things are handled. They're finding out that AI lies to you about things that might have an intuitive process going on internally to figure out, like Austin is the capital of Texas, but it skips the fact that Austin is in Texas. I mean, they've actually determined that it lies about certain things, about the reasoning process.
Oh, wow.
And there's also the physics part of it is how do all these billions of neurons and connections and all these layers that are internally, how do those work? And I suspect that's probably what they're looking at.
Yeah.
There's a lot of research on that.
Yeah, so Gomi-san leads NTT research. He's Japanese, but he's probably more American than Japanese. And we were joking about that when he and I met. And they kept using Sir Isaac Newton's, like theory of relativity, if I can get that without being tongue-tied. And, and the whole, apple falling from the tree and why do some apples like hit the ground and they stay intact, and why do others explode? And so it was a fascinating analogy to kind of, I don't know, make what they're trying to do clearer, I guess, to folks that are not necessarily technical. But Matt, what do you think?
I'm curious, and it's a question for both of you, understanding kind of the physics, if you will, behind. Does it lead to greater accuracy? Does it lead to what is the outcome of getting a deeper understanding of like the inner workings of reasoning within these models?
I mean,
let me just say the problem here. The problem is that the market has more of an appetite for the useful outcomes and what they can do with AI and how it does it. And that's
right.
And that's a dangerous situation. And I think it's really good somebody's Anthropic wrote a paper. I remember the title of it is AI reasoning models don't always tell you what they're thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like I said, it's the thinking part, and then there's also the AI physics aspect of it. And I don't think anyone's done that.
Yeah, I think, Matt, to answer your question, I'm always focused on sort of the innovation kind of factor, and I always this is one of my famous quotes, like competition breeds innovation. But I think if we can more deeply understand the inner workings of all of this, it can unlock innovation. But to Paul's point, does that introduce bias, right? And does that introduce the likelihood of expecting an outcome and you get to that outcome and it sort of skips and it biases the reasoning. So I think it drives innovation, but at the same time, there's going to have to be some examination around ensuring that what's returned is actually accurate and factual.
Yeah. I think that's what business cares about. It's getting accurate, relevant outcomes faster, right?
Right.
Try to have that, right?
Yeah.
And I think everything has to tie to kind of that measurement. And if it sounds like this does, but it seems like there are an awful lot of science projects that go on that become interesting, but not necessarily driving greater value or greater efficiency or optimization of kind of AI within an organization. That's why I'm glad you guys kind of talked to that, because a lot of times I hear it's like, oh, we're doing A, B, and C. It's like, great, but what does that mean for, if you can't tie it directly to the value it's delivering to a consumer?
What's the practicality? Yeah, for sure.
I took a look at your show notes on that. I think it said that they're also interested in doing something with LEO satellites.
Yeah, so in the research note, I also talk about what they're doing with space data centers, and that's a whole nother subject that I could probably talk 30 minutes on. I don't want to do, but there's research sort of. I think this research can potentially tie back into that as well. But yeah, I mean, it's the company is fascinating as I get to know it more. I don't know if I mentioned this 2 weeks ago, but I spent time with a number of different executives, and I learned a lot of interesting things. Like, did the two of you know that NTT is the third largest provider of data center services in the world?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know. Yeah.
I think it's well placed. There's a problem with LEO satellites as far as communications go. That I think the government recently ripped out a ground-based system. They had IONOS systems globally. I don't remember how many. There were like maybe 100 or so. But they took them out. And what these things did, they're essentially like a radar that shoots straight up in the air. And it shoots a frequency of 3 to 30 megahertz. And then it measures the reflected signals coming back down. So they've got an idea of what's happening with the ionosphere. And the LEO satellites are right in the middle of the ionosphere. It runs from about 60 kilometers up to about 300. And I think LEO is around 100 kilometers or something like that.
Yeah.
And what happens is that they measure what is called the total electron count right now through the use of satellites shooting a communications beam through the ionosphere and measuring what happens to it when it goes through there, because the ionosphere is filled with ions at a certain time of the day.
Yeah.
And they replace that system with 5 different new systems, which doesn't nearly cover the land area of the United States or anywhere else. So there's a deficiency there, and we've got guys. We've got a startup that we're working on a model that's going to replace 5 systems with about 1,000 different systems scattered across the U.S. And our system will measure the ionosphere at 1,000 different points and use AI to assemble all that information and paint a picture of what the ionosphere looks like at any given time. So I think we're going to try and help the government out a little bit.
That's pretty cool. And like, I mean, obviously there's contention with communication and spectrum and that sort of thing, I would assume, as it passes through the ionosphere. So, and sort of like, the contention that mobile network operators have on the ground, with line of sight, if it's millimeter wave or whatnot. But that sounds pretty cool. Another one of Paul's top secret projects.
Top secret. Speaking of top secret, his next topic was so top secret, I forgot to create a banner for it. So I just jumped in. If you had a pithy, cool, funny kind of lead in, I apologize, Paul, but I just added QEC and LPDC as your topic for discussion. Is that good enough?
It's good enough.
QVC, just to throw folks up.
QEC stands for quantum error correction, and LDPC stands for, I forgot exactly, low density parity check. And that the reason we haven't been able to build a large quantum computer from 1995 up until now has primarily been the fact that qubits are very sensitive to basically anything, noise, radiation, stray signals, anything, and it causes errors in qubits. They're very difficult to correct, and now they're working on the. Go ahead.
Keep going.
Now they're working on a system that can do a better job of that, called the low parity density check. It works originally. Quantum error correction started off back in '95 when a guy named Peter Shor happened to work at Bell Labs developed a way to encode a logical qubit into 9 physical qubits, and that could correct one single error. And then a little bit later, a guy named Steen did that a little bit better, and he was able to do it with 7 qubits. And so quantum error corrections kind of moved on. And the one that has been primarily used over the last, I'd say about 10 or 15 years is something called a surface code that places qubits like on a 2D lattice. And then they can use different pretty simple checks to find out if an error has occurred. That was able to handle error rates of about 1%. But the problem is with that, it took a huge amount of qubits to do error correction. And they've come along with IBM and Microsoft and a number of other companies that have worked on something called this LDPC. And it's kind of another scheme. It uses sparse parity check matrices, and it's got very strong error correction, and it has a kind of a low resource requirement. You can do it with about 1/10 of the number of qubits that was required for the surface code. So that looks like that's going to be our way forward. They'll take IBM has got one system where they use something called a logical processing unit along with a kind of a matrix of 288 physical qubits to do error correction. It's very strong. Like I say, it's about 1/10 of the resource requirements is what we previously used. So that looks like that's going to be the way going forward. And I'm sure there's going to be more corrections and improvements made to it. But it looks like we're on the path to fault-tolerant quantum computing, in my opinion.
Does this hasten that path? Does it shorten that path? Does it?
Yeah. I mean, some people, depends on who you talk to. Some people think it's going to take another 10 years. Jensen said, I don't know if you remember his comment or not, he said that useful quantum computing was 15 to 30 years away.
Yeah.
And that's certainly not the case. He's since retracted that and apologized for it, but that's certainly not the case. We can look for fault-tolerant quantum computing in a few more years, I think.
But do you, just a quick play devil's advocate, do you think fault tolerance is the only thing keeping quantum computing from?
No. There's other issues and other challenges, but I think it's mainly engineering challenges at this point. So there's a lot of things being done, a lot of research being done, and I think we're going to be able to get it all together maybe a lot sooner than 15 years.
It feels to me like when we talk about quantum, we kind of draw, not you, but in the market, things I read kind of, from other analysts or maybe from the press, they treat quantum like almost like AI, like it's this kind of tangential application of kind of the way we work today. And to me, quantum is, if it's not a 90 degrees out of phase from what we do today, it's a completely different thing entirely, which leads me to believe that even when we make it so that we have fault tolerance and production ready quantum systems, there's still a tectonic market shift that has to happen for quantum to be useful in our lives.
Yeah, and that point is that's fault tolerance.
It's not just fault tolerance. It's people being able to interact with it. It's people being able to use it. It's people being able to do things with it that don't have a PhD in quantum mechanics.
Yeah, they're working on. In fact, they've got it now. Ways that make it much easier to program a quantum computer than it was, 10 years ago.
Right.
So instead of getting a PhD, you just need a master's.
Yeah. So, but the main thing is we've got a path forward that looks pretty good. So.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting stuff. Hey, let's we're running a little bit longer this morning, so I'm going to go through my next topic pretty quickly. Kind of this week in the tariff soap opera. I leave that as a question mark. So there's a lot of negativity that comes out of kind of talking about the tariffs, and there's good reasons for, good reasons against. It's a lot of political stuff I don't want to jump into. But some of the stuff that's getting lumped into tariffs, I want to kind of call out and get your opinions on it. So AMD announced, I think it was last week, that they're going to be experiencing, or they're going to be writing off or taking an $800 million charge due to restrictions being put on place around, I think it's the MI308. It's their MI300 series GPU that was developed to stay in line with what was the current restrictions on exports to China around GPU and AI technology. Yeah. That's on top of NVIDIA, maybe the week before, saying they were taking a $5.5 billion hit because of restrictions that are in place around the H20 GPU, a GPU that was designed specifically for China to stay in line with the restrictions that were put in place. These have nothing to do with tariffs.
No.
This is purely a competitive AI, call it national security interest, whatever you want, but export limits that started in, were talked about many years ago. I think they were started in the last administration, and they're being made more stringent in this administration. We hear that China, Huawei, a Chinese company, has developed a GPU that's supposed to be somewhat competitive with, I don't know about the GB200 or 300, but certainly at least the 800 H series from NVIDIA, which would make it competitive with AMD's. And we hear that HBM restrictions that are being put in place, There's a response being made, a response being taken from China around developing their own HBM as well. What do y'all what's y'all take on this? I mean, it's clear that China found ways to get around the restrictions when you look at DeepSeek and kind of the way they were able to turn. It's clear they were able to get around some of the restrictions. Anybody who thinks those were purely trained on the H20 or is not being real.
Well, while the tariffs may impede China's AI progress and stuff they're working on in the short term, but by us limiting access to certain chips, I think it's going to stimulate China's production, and it's going to put them. They're going to put a lot of emphasis on developing a.
Yeah, I mean, what? Yeah, I mean, it just provides fuel to Huawei, through their high silicon design arm to create a GPU and that begs the question, does that threaten national security more? I mean, I'm not going to get political either, but and the challenge China will continue to have is actually finding someone to fabricate this stuff for them, right? And that's a high bar. They don't, Huawei's had, years of design capability, but not a lot of places to go build the stuff, right? And it's a heavy lift to bring a fab up, as Matt, you're former AMD.
Mm-hmm. So there are definitely unintended consequences of this.
Right. What do you think, Matt?
I agree with both of you. I think there is a challenge China will have in the short term and kind of from a manufacturing process perspective that I'm certain it will overcome longer term. And I don't know that there's a right or wrong answer to it. Do you cut off the nose to spite the face, or do you keep the nose? And it's like, I really don't know what the right answer is. You can limit their use. I think China has been down this path of trying to. I mean, look, when I was at AMD, and this is 10 years ago, we had struck co-licensing agreements with China. Even before EPYC launched, we had a license agreement in place where they could use our first generation design architecture and build their own version. And they weren't able to do it. 10 years later, they're still struggling with kind of some of that. They're going to get there. The question is, to what you both said, are they going to get there faster because we're cutting off supply? Mm-hmm. It's easier for them to consume our technology than to design their own. It's a lot different than kind of, assembling a server. I think they're going to get there. It's just I don't know what the right answer is. That's why this is a good conversation, and I wonder if you're a viewer or a listener, would love to hear your kind of comments in the show notes around what you think. China what we should or shouldn't be doing in relation to China, because I don't think it's an easy answer. It's not a political answer either.
No,
not in any way, shape, or form.
I think the tariffs are a good idea, but at the same time, maybe we should have a one-off for certain countries.
Yeah, I mean, we're ripping the Band-Aid off, right? And I think long term, what this current administration is doing, I think is good long term for the economy, but there's going to be some short term, bumps along the road and pain. Matt, the other thing that I wonder about, will this afford an opportunity excuse for other companies just to start writing NRE off and investment off, it's sort of an easy out, right? So, and again, we don't provide investment advice to anyone that watches or listens to our podcast, but that's another interesting wrinkle. I mean, what AMD announced seems reasonable to me. What NVIDIA announced at like 5.5 billion or whatever that number was sounded ridiculous to me. But
Oh, it's not though. The thing is, it's not.
it's not.
It is a legitimate charge they're going to take.
Okay.
Their revenue for their GPUs is that much larger than
Got
what.
it. Okay, that's a good point.
It's
Yeah.
completely in line. And just to clarify, this is not a tariff related issue. This is an export control related
Yes.
issue that
Yes.
is part of both administrations.
Right.
So it's a partisan, I guess you could say,
Mhm.
kind of challenge. And I don't know if if folks out there see this as a good thing for the U.S. or a bad thing for the U.S. or a good thing for technology or a bad thing for technology. I mean, look, we banned export, or we banned acquisition of Huawei infrastructure some time ago here in the
Yeah.
U.S. in Western
Rip and
Europe.
replace. Yeah. Same in Europe. Same in Europe. Yeah.
And by the way, we've seen Huawei do quite well in South America and other parts of the country. It kind of accelerated growth in other parts of the country.
Yeah.
It's
The
or other
African
parts of the
front.
globe. I'm sorry, not the country. And that's I think we're going to probably face a similar situation with silicon, although it's far
Yeah.
more complex than building a server. The tariffs themselves. I mean, I don't want to wade into what's good and bad, but
Mhm.
yeah. But
Yeah,
you are right.
I just looked at NASDAQ. It's down 500 today so far.
Yeah. I think you are right, though. I mean, I think a lot of companies are going to use tariffs as not an excuse, but it's justification for doing a lot of charge-offs or write-offs or kind of de-investing in certain areas.
Yeah.
Anyway, I didn't mean to open up a can of worms. I just thought it was
No.
kind of interesting to watch, kind of the technology intersect with geopolitics
Yeah. That's interesting.
or national security. Anyway, moving on, we got some Aruba stuff going on and AIOps. What the heck are we talking about here?
I'm going to be very succinct because we're having like lots of great discourse but yeah. So I spent a lot of time with the Aruba team. This announcement broke while I was in San Francisco at NTT Upgrade, but they actually announced. I'm going to talk a little bit about AIOps, but some other things as well. So they've enhanced their AIOps capability. So I've been tracking Aruba for many years, and in fact, I worked with the team when they launched their Edge Services platform. My goodness, that had to be 5 or 6 years ago. And so, the company, HPE and Aruba have been very, very focused on delivering very cutting edge AI ops, and so now with the whole notion of modern AI, they're sort of taking that to the next level. And what they're doing with this current update is they've now introduced the ability to continuously monitor wireless and wired networks and proactively optimize performance, resolve configuration issues, and identify security gaps. And this also comes on the heels of the OpsRamp acquisition in the integration. And Matt, I'd love to get your perspective on this because I know you're close to OpsRamp. I've been very impressed with how quickly HPE has been able to integrate OpsRamp, say that fast 3 times, into the overall stack. And so what this is doing from a networking perspective is bringing full stack observability. And this is something the team actually has invited me to participate. The HPE team has invited me to participate in a webinar where we're going to go into more detail. And I'm another gratuitous plug, but that'll happen on April 29th. So we can provide a link after the show is over for those that want to tune into that. But in addition to the OpsRamp integration and the AI ops enhancement, now through Central, which is the management console, their support for virtual private cloud. And there's also now an on-premise deployment option for highly secured government environments as well. So HPE does a lot of business with state and local as well as the federal government. And so I view this as an opportunity for them to continue their momentum those particular areas. So,
yeah, I love what HPE is doing with OpsRamp. I mean, it's something I like to talk about a lot, and I like what they're doing overall from a kind of full stack observability. What I would, and maybe they do this already, well, I don't know, but a lot of times they talk about AIOps and they kind of talk about it in a sub-segmented way, right? There's AIOps is big, right?
It's broad. It's network assurance. It's security. Yeah, it's very broad.
Well, it's not just that. It's managing and monitoring your infrastructure. It's everything. It is. When you talk about AIOps, it's a platform that drives autonomous compute, right? Autonomous compute is storage, compute, networking, security, all of it tied together, and self-healing, self-learning, all that.
Mm-hmm.
I would love for, and maybe they do this, but I haven't seen it where HPE talks about it from that level instead of talking about AIOps and kind of these slivers of what AIOps does. These are specific lanes of capability within a larger AIOps story.
Yeah.
And no company does a great job of talking about it at that grand scale yet. And by the way, there are multiple levels to AIOps, right? There's kind of from 0 to 5, they kind of align it to autonomous driving. It would be really great if they kind of talked about where on that kind of 0 to 5 kind of ranking, they sit today, and talk about kind of what that vision looks like. Because they have a great story, and they have so much they've built. There's OpsRamp, there's COM, there's so many different tools they have that they have a really great story if they stitch it all together and start kind of simplifying it for IT folks.
I think, Matt, we're gonna hear more on this subject at Discover when you and I and Patrick and whoever else from our firm will be there this June. But they, because I've been spending some time with them recently preparing for this webinar, there's some things coming. But I agree with you, telling the broader story and where you're at on that continuum, because I have heard that from other providers like Cisco, Splunk, that sort of that analogy to like autonomous driving, level 1, 0 to 5 or whatever that scale is. So
it's a great story. I love what they're doing, and they have so many. It's funny because you're right. Cisco gets a lot of credit for its acquisition of Splunk and kind of integration in, but it's not just integration into their security. It's how it improves Intersight as well. And Dell's the same way they have similar kind of capabilities, but none of these companies have kind of tied it all together. Because here's a reality, right? And I'll shut up after this. Is you've got the days of having networking teams, storage teams, compute teams.
Be all individual.
It's going away. We have a team of generalists, and the only way you make that model works is automating as much of that functionality and all of those tasks as you possibly can. Otherwise, you're going to be forever stuck in siloed IT capability stacks, and that doesn't help anybody. So anyway, I'll shut up.
Agreed. Amen. Agreed.
Hey, Paul, did you want to add anything before we go on and talk about the battle of the network stars or the chatbots or something like that?
I agree. I'm just, I'm amazed at the breadth and width of what AI can do in terms of AI ops, and comparing that to human frailty. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, it's one of the great things about AI.
Mm-hmm.
So before we jump into the battle of chatbots, do y'all remember the battle of the network stars?
Dude, I was just going to say, you dated all of our ages, and I remember it. It conjured up memories. I don't know why, of Farrah Fawcett Majors.
Yeah.
And that poster that I had in 7th grade in my room.
I remember, I think it was Robert Conrad. He always had that that heavily hairsprayed hair.
Oh, yeah.
Him compete and his hair wouldn't move. I was fascinated by that.
He was on Wild Wild West too, remember?
Yes. Anyway.
I
Sorry,
love it.
Paul, you're up. Battle of the Chatbots.
That's an intro, Paul. Come on, man.
I just want to pass along a couple things about leaderboards, and I've got three favorite leaderboards that I use. Trying to keep track of what's going on. It's really difficult. I mean, it seems like every 5 minutes somebody's got a new AI model or a new feature or something, and it's hard to keep track of them. But there's three different leaderboards that I like. Hugging Face is probably the best all-around leaderboard for information. Got a chatbot arena, which is an LLM leaderboard. It's all community driven. They've got like a million user votes on this thing. You can look at different aspects of it in terms of, you can compare, how different models react to certain prompts that you're giving it. You can vote on it. They've got anonymous and they've got randomized matches too. And they hide the identities in that. Some of the big models in OpenAI and everything have come out with some type of code word or something, and they've run the specs on it and run it against different models. They've got about 90 to 100 LLMs on the leaderboard. They've got different tasks and stuff and updates and insights and I mean it's really a good one if you're looking to see how a certain model is doing and what the specs look like and how it compares to the others. Another one of my favorites is called Papers with Code.ai, and it's exactly that. It's got different stats on different models, and then you can also get the code and the paper associated with it. The code team is quite credible. They're actually meta AI researchers that have developed the site. So, but Papers with Code is a community site also. It's got peer-reviewed machine learning papers. I mean, they've got everything. They've got I'm trying to remember what they've got. Machine learn portable for machine learning, computer science, physics, math. They've even got one on astronomy. So, I mean, it's a good site. The other one that I like it's a Vellum, LLM leaderboard. And the reason I like that is because it's got some really great comparisons and graphics on matching up specs of different LLMs that you want to look at. So it's got a broad model comparison, and this is really good from if you want to look at something graphically or take some images or something like that. But you can also got the choice if you want to match one model against the other. It's got a lot of drop downs that you can use. So those are my favorite three. There's a ton of them out there, but I don't know if anybody else has got something they're interested in.
I have not played around with these leaderboards. This is so kind of back up for a second, okay? And I'm going to be respectful of time here, but is this a kind of, if I'm assuming that this is I'm an IT leader and I need to figure out which models I want to use at my company. This is where I go to kind of look at community thing.
Yeah.
Oh, that is.
It's all open source, so they've got proprietary and open source models in there too. So anyway,
that's cool.
Play around with it. It's kind of fun to look at, and I particularly like Papers with Code just because I'm interested in the nuts and bolts of these things. But,
can you drop the link in the show notes for that, Paul?
I think I did. I did it for Hugging Face, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's very cool.
That is cool.
I love that. It must be a useful tool. I'm kind of curious. Again, I'd love it. It would be really cool if we got some feedback from the folks that listen and watch around what they've used to kind of begin that journey, right? Kind of models, whether they've used these leaderboards or they just trust others or kind of go to Reddit or, kind of deal with the
Pinterest or, because it makes me think of like Pinterest or Reddit or,
There's other ones, verified AI rankings, Byte plus AI model leaderboard. Azure's got a leaderboard. Val AI is another open source, but these are my favorite.
Excellent. Very good. That's super useful. I'm going to go really quickly on the last topic because, as you said, we've been having a lot of good conversation. So I just want to give a quick shout out to Dell. HPE had a launch of their Gen 12 platform, which was focused around Intel Xeon 6, their 6th generation Xeon processor. Back in February, and Dell had their launch a couple of weeks back. This is my first opportunity to talk about it. In the show notes, I've done a write-up on it on LinkedIn, but it's easy. And HP had their positioning around security, and they did a great job with that. Dell took a position which I thought was really interesting around modernization, and that is, we've kind of updated our portfolio to include Xeon 6, and that's what a lot of folks will focus on when they see it, and they go, oh, look, you have X amount more cores and better performance and so on and so forth. Claims that every server manufacturer can make, right? Because it's Xeon 6, just like with EPYC. You have a new generation, you get better performance. But what I found really interesting is the shift that Dell is going through in the way it designs and delivers servers out into the market. There's this design Open Compute project, OCP, which has been around for a number of years, has a system design process, if you will, called MHS, or Modular Hardware Systems. And it's a way to design server motherboards like Lego blocks. Plug this with this with this. It takes care of your physical and electrical interfaces so that you can quickly update one part of a server motherboard without having to update everything else, right? That's part one. Part two, it makes it easier for an Intel or an AMD to design one module, then it can then hand off to HPE, Dell, Lenovo, and everybody else so they can quickly deploy these out into the marketplace. Saves on money, saves on time, right? Why does this matter? Well, when you look at kind of the way CPUs are being designed faster and faster and hitting the market faster and faster, and you look at the way GPUs are being designed faster and faster and manufactured faster and faster, it's hard for the server manufacturers to stay ahead or at pace with what these vendors are doing.
Sure.
A lot of times it's 6 months to a year later before you see these systems come out into the marketplace. And because of that, you lose on innovation, right? So, it's harder for a Dell to innovate. So Dell has fully kind of embraced this MHS design principle and has built it into all of their servers. So the R470, 570, 670, 770, all these new Intel-based servers are designed with this OCP MHS kind of design principle kind of employed. Allows them to get so really good on that front. It means they'll be faster and quicker to deploy future generations based on that as well. They also, as part of this announcement, they deployed what they call it's a rack level server called the M7725 it's an AMD-based rack server. And it's essentially a fully integrated rack with a bunch of AMD-based nodes in there. I think it's up to 72. I can't remember the exact number, but it allows you to deploy 27,000 cores in a rack. It's a supercomputing kind of AI HPC designed rack level server that's designed to achieve highest levels of performance, built-in cooling, built-in liquid cooling, everything kind of just plug plug your cooling in, and away you go. Really cool stuff they're doing. They also did stuff around storage, software updates that make it a lot more performant. I would highly recommend you read my LinkedIn article. I don't want to go too long. And they did stuff around data resiliency that I know you've spoken to in the past, Will. So lots of good stuff they're doing. Anybody who thinks Dell is just a kind of fast follower and server manufacturer, think again. There's a lot going on there that I think is really kind of setting them up for a long-term kind of agile infrastructure play for the AI factory and elsewhere.
Yeah. Hey, Matt, I had, a recent briefing with the team, and we discussed a lot of what they're doing around connectivity and, networking stacks and that sort of thing. And I think Dell gets a bad rap. I mean, I'll preface this by saying that I'm former Dell. I started my career in 91 at Dell. And I remember when I was in Dell Direct Sales and we had launched servers, a lot of the configuration issues that we had, and we were trying, it was Dell learning, right? And so I think over time, because the company embraces open standards, there's been this perception that they're a fast follower. They're not necessarily a technology leader. But what's really interesting, and I've had the same view, and I've been critical of Dell's networking strategy for some time, that they're using, merchant silicon. They're doing sort of commodity things on the switches and the routers, and they're using a lot of Broadcom. But I recently got really educated on like what the company is doing to sort of improve that position, and certainly adopting this OCP, blueprint, whatever you want to call it, design is moving them in the right direction. Also, from a managed services perspective, helping companies, kind of navigate the AI journey, helping companies to understand what's required from a compute, storage, networking perspective. And Dell has turned into a full-blown management consulting company. And it's fun to see that progression, having started at the company in 91, and it's 2025 today, just 30 something plus years, and to see that maturity. And so it's a long way for me to agree with you to state that they are an innovator. They're certainly an innovator when it comes to supply chain, and this modular approach that you were speaking to earlier, speaks volumes to that. But I think it's just fun, to see their evolution, and they're truly a technology provider, and they're doing it at scale.
Yeah, they are, and they do it at the silicon level. They're doing it at the hardware and supply chain level, and they're also doing it at the software level. We see it with their Store Protect or Power Protect lineup, their Power Store, Power Scale, Object Store products that they've updated. They're going across full stack kind of innovation, and it's good to see. And it's good to see. It's good to see. Kind of the way companies are kind of evolving to meet the needs of IT organizations that have evolved as well, right? Mm-hmm. They're starting to behave. IT's starting to behave more like a cloud company would, a CSP would behave, mm-hmm. And the way Dell is responding to that and others is kind of evolving to meet them where they are. So just great to see. I'll shut up.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Hey, Paul, you're on mute.
I don't mean He's being polite again.
Literally on mute.
Always trying to be polite, and I get burned for it.
Were you going to say something? Sorry, buddy.
Yeah, I've got to make two comments about Dell. One is that I wrote a white paper on Dell AI Factory a while back, and I can certainly recommend that, especially if you're looking to deploy AI across the enterprise. One of the big differentiating factors, in addition to having really a good system, is the Dell professional services team. Mm-hmm. I interviewed a couple of customers that have used Dell AI Factory, and one of them was in the UK, had a huge system in a university, medical university, and they had nothing but praise for the professional services organization. So if you're looking to deploy across an enterprise, I'd recommend you definitely take a look at it.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to make a comment about is that the things have changed in operations. I mean, there's no longer anybody in the back of a radio rack like I was, taking an oscilloscope, chasing down problems. I mean, everybody's become more, they've become younger and they've become more generalist, and they interact differently with technology. And that's going to add to operational challenges too.
Yep.
So,
yeah, they're tearing this down. Yeah. Good points. So listen, we went way long because we have so much good conversation. Before we wrap, I know travel season's coming up. Where are you guys going to be over the next few weeks? Any exciting travel coming up for you both? Or
Yeah, I'll be at a RSA conference, Matt. So, but I've got a week at home this week, so I'll head out next Sunday. I'll be there all week. I'll be there with Patrick Moorhead and Daniel Newman and the 6.5 media crew. And I'll be doing a couple of on-the-road recordings with a couple of companies. So I won't mention those companies. So leave a little bit of mystery there.
Look at you, huh?
Yeah, but that's I'm just thinking my next business trip, because I just came off the road for 4 weeks of business travel and 1 week of personal travel. So.
God love you, man. God love you. How about you, Paul? Anything coming up? I know you're busy at work, chasing down the problems with quantum and trying to solve them for all mankind.
Yeah, I'm going to start traveling again soon, and looking forward to more travel than between my house and HEB.
I love that. I've got Nutanix.next coming up, which is going to be in DC. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'll be doing I think 4 or 5 press panels there.
Nice.
Yeah, it'll be a lot of fun. Dell Tech World's coming up. Pure Accelerate's coming up. Broadcom's analyst events coming up. NetApp's events coming up. I think between now and July 4th, we'll be on the road pretty much every week between us all. So
yeah, I mean, I think after RSA, I get a couple of day breather, and then you're right, Matt. Like, we move into like marathon, and June is always a marathon for us as well, right? Yeah.
May as well just set up shop in Vegas for the month of June.
Right.
All right. Well, listen, hey guys, thanks for taking the time and chatting. To our 12,000 followers and watchers that are on right now, thank you for taking the time and spending the time with us. Again, like and subscribe, please, and do not take anything we say as anything more than just interesting insights as to what's going on. We don't invest based on our advice, nor should you. But guys, thank you so much. We'll see you in a couple of weeks, and we're going to have a lot of good conversation based on these conferences we're going.
Yeah. So. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, guys.
Have a great, safe week, guys.
You too.
Thanks.